All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, happy birthday. Elliot Rearing, and Jacob
Hey,
Tissett
Casey,
with you here.
I'd like to be the first to wish you a happy birthday.
Well, you already were the
For
first.
next year.
I think this makes it the second person.
I want to make it very clear for those, because like on the radio, there are segments, right? So there'll be a whole segment, then commercials. Kinner just acted like he was the first one. For the new people that are listening right now, for the new segment, this segment, I'd also like to be the first to wish you a happy birthday.
I texted Casey this morning before his wife wished him happy birthday.
Doesn't count. I wish that counted, but it doesn't count. I'm sorry.
He texted me and said I was first.
Doesn't count, and you know it doesn't count. But I was first, and I'm happy to be first. I wanted to make it known that I'm first, though.
I love that he mansplained to the listeners segment 1, segment 2.
Yeah,
That's
a
my
little
favorite.
peek behind the curtain. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're not wrong, though.
that's how it works. I'm a radio pro, baby.
You used to work in radio before this, right? It's been a minute
I
for
did,
that one,
yeah, I
but
did.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
the
did.
rumor on the street. But James Rapine yesterday kind of, I don't know if broke the news, but had released the news, kind of confirmed it, that the Cincinnati Bengals plan to use the franchise tag on Tee Higgins. And, of course, that was the big talking point yesterday. So much is being made about the Cincinnati Bengals. And I noticed, I see Goodberry and I see some others getting kind of defensive. I saw Goodberry tweet earlier this morning that on the radio, that the Bengals are, how are they going to get this done and getting defensive and stuff, and that, can it be done? That the Bengals are going to have to work magic to get this done. And he's sitting there saying, well, he goes, it's not going to be magic. He goes, it can be done and all this. And I go, I think we got to stop being defensive about it. I think we all know it can be done. We've seen examples throughout the league. The problem is, until we see the Bengals do it, there is going to be doubt. There is going to be concern. There is going to be people questioning, can it be done? I don't think there's people out there that are saying there's no way it can be done. I think there's people just strictly questioning, will the Bengals actually get it done? Will they evolve? Will they, do something different that they have never done throughout the existence of the franchise when it comes to, of course, modern day contracts and being willing to not just spend heavily on one or two players, but go all in on multiple players? This franchise tag announcement yesterday, it would be the second tag on Tee Higgins. I don't think it's as big a news as what we think it is, because I think at least initially right now, all this has done is, and you guys briefly touched on it, I think it's just bought them a little bit more time. Yeah. Time to either get the extension done, a long-term extension, or time to figure out if they're just going to move on from him via trade. Either way, good for the Bengals for not just letting him walk out the door for nothing. The fact that they do plan on tagging him means the Bengals are going to get something. They are either going to get the best number 2 wide receiver in football on a long-term extension, or they are going to get picks in return for him if they move on from him. Obviously, that second option is not going to make a lot of Bengals fans happy, but considering the options, that is the second best option you could have. Because the first option, that's the best one, long-term extension. You lock Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and him long-term, and that's your core. And that's going to be a very tough core to stop and beat, for the remainder of their time together. The second best option is, well, Tee Higgins is not a Cincinnati Bengal, but you at least get some draft capital back in return for him. And when you are a team like the Bengals who needs to plug a lot of holes, draft capital is very important. And then the third option, not even the best option, but the third option is you just let him go. And we now know that third option most likely is not even going to be considered at this point. What do you guys make of this? I didn't think this was as big a news as what people were making it out yesterday. The only thing that it reassured me is he's not walking out the door for nothing. It still doesn't mean it's a long-term thing. I know some are saying that they think that it could be, and obviously it could be. I just still don't know if it is. I'm not confident that is still the direction that the Bengals are going to go in. Do you believe that's the case?
Why it's such a big deal is because of what you said right there. He's not going to walk out the door for free, which is exactly what happened the last time we were in this situation with Jesse Bates.
Yeah.
We tagged him. We didn't get to an extension. He played the year on the tag. They didn't want to double tag him because of the risk of a holdout or whatever else, and he walked out the door for free to Atlanta, and he's been playing great, and we talk about it every week since. So at least they're learning their lessons as we progress through this offseason. The first lesson they had to learn was tag this guy so he doesn't leave for free, and they've learned that. Now, do they learn the lesson that you can't let star players leave the facility? We'll see. Time will tell. But I think this is pretty big news because it tells you already that just from a few years ago, the Bengals are operating differently, and they're doing things a different way, and they're prioritizing keeping these guys around. Jeremy Fowler continued to report last night that the plan behind the scenes for the Bengals is to extend all these guys, and we've known that here for a while, but it seems to be shocking every time anyone in the national media reports that. But any other team in the league league would extend these 3 guys. So I don't understand why a lot of people are giving the Bengals an out in terms of, finding ways to explain why they can't or why they shouldn't or why they won't. I think if you're a fan of the Bengals, you should be talking about why they should, why they can, and why there's really nothing holding them back, because anyone else would do it. So why wouldn't the Bengals?
I don't think it's big news because, I mean, if they didn't put the tag on him here and they let him walk like they did with Jesse Bates, I think the franchise should probably be burned to the ground because that's not how anyone operates outside of the Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe I can't imagine some of the worst teams in the NFL also haven't done that, but it just makes us look like a joke. So I'm very happy that the Bengals did it. They had to do it. The biggest part that I took away was that they are looking to extend him. So it's not like this is not we're gonna put him on the tag and we're gonna trade him right now. This was we're gonna tag, we're gonna give him time, like you guys said, and we're gonna try to work on a deal and keep Tee Higgins in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and Jamar. That's what the plan is. That's what I took away. Putting the tag on him or planning to put the tag on him does me nothing because we all knew it should happen and it probably would happen with almost 100% certainty because it makes no sense to just let him walk. No sense.
So the tag window starts today through March 4th. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they have not put the tag on him, so it's not like he's officially been franchise tagged yet. It just, obviously Rapin's report comes out that that's the intention of the Cincinnati Bengals. They have until March 4th to make that decision. Not make that decision, but just to announce it and finalize it along those lines. Now, the thing that's interesting about the reporting is because last year is kind of a lot of the similar conversations, right? Like we kind of knew that they were going to franchise tag him, an option to trade him, obviously, but we kind of had a feeling that if they were going to go all in, because remember a year ago at this time, we felt that this team, when they got Burrow back, it was going to be, we talked about it yesterday, the Super Bowl this team had Super Bowl expectations a year ago at this time. It was just get Burrow back, get him healthy, and this team will be competing for a Super Bowl. We didn't really anticipate all the deficiencies that the team ended up showing throughout the season, of course, so it's a whole other different animal now. But in this article from James Rapine, he does talk about the fact that the why tag him this year versus the why tag him last year. Last year it was, well, we're going to tag him to go all in for 1 year because they felt that they truly could go get that Super Bowl last year. Obviously, that didn't work out. The why this year, as he refers to in this article, feels different. The why this time he feels is to get a long-term deal done. Is that how you guys feel? Casey, let's go to, I don't know if you guys know, it's Casey's birthday.
It is Casey's birthday. I want to be the first, Casey,
yes,
to wish you
please.
a happy birthday on this program. No one's done it yet on the show, at least. Not this, because, we do segments on the radio. So this segment, just wanted to wish you a happy birthday.
Damn it, I wanted to be the first.
It's all right, maybe next time.
It's impossible. We'll see who wins the first next time.
Next segment, But Casey, at this point, the why for the Cincinnati Bengals, do you feel like the why feels different? James Rapine in this article says the why feels different this time around versus a year ago, where the why just felt like, let's go all in for one more season. We all felt like it was the last run at Tee Higgins in Cincinnati. Oh, yeah. It feels different this time, at least according to James Rapine. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree, and I think many fans feel the same way. I would venture to say the sentiment right now is you tag him to get value out of him, and that's just something that I don't think the Bengals were really necessarily looking at last season. I think that was their all-in move on the season, was to tag T and let him play on that franchise tag. And this year it feels more like a step to go into an all-in type season where you're extending Chase, you're extending Trey, and you're making other such moves to build up the team with the amount of cap space that they will have available later on. But even if they don't get something done, you tag him because now you're going to get value out of him, which is a step in the right direction in becoming a modern-day franchise, which is all we've really been asking for, is do you have a plan in place that gives you value back in return? And you couldn't have asked for a better move at this point. It was a no-brainer move. You can't let him walk for nothing. And that's what essentially you would have done if you don't tag him. So kudos to the Bengals. They're making a step in the right direction, whether that's re-signing him to a deal, which I think most of us agree that that's what they should do in this room. And if they don't, you trade him for value. So I'm happy with the decision either way.
There was someone on this very program in March of last year during the Arizona spring training trip that said double tagging T and handling a trade or extension next offseason would be the way to go. He was called crazy.
He was called crazy.
Reed said that?
No.
Oh.
Little guy who's down at school at Alabama, called in as a guest, threw it out there as a crazy idea for how to handle the offseason. Yeah, no, tagging T this offseason, like Casey said, it was never really an option because if you hit the open market, we've talked about it a ton, and that's been your argument against T staying in Cincinnati, Kenner, for a long time now, is if he hits the open market, the Bengals aren't going to be able to compete. They aren't. The thing that they have in their back pocket is you get to play with Joe and Jamar, and we're going to keep Trey, and we're going to add to the defense. And this sell of playing for the Bengals and keeping this core together is one of the biggest pieces for them. And they lose a lot of that if he hits the open market. And he's talking to the Patriots, with $125 million in cap room, and the Commanders with a rookie contract quarterback and all that stuff. And whether it's right or not, Tee Higgins is not going to get the same price to stay in Cincinnati as he is to go elsewhere. He's just not. That's not how it's going to work. And if he wants to stay, he's going to have to take a little bit off the top. And doing the tag so that the Bengals trade him to, probably somewhere where he doesn't necessarily want to go gives them another bit of benefit in those negotiations.
Yeah, I think that if Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson are back next year, you're building onto something that was already good. Like, I know last year was a disaster. I know the year before they failed, but you're still trying to build onto it. Like, you're not, if you get rid of him, you're taking away something that you can't really afford to take away.
Yep.
That's why it's like, I know this isn't the biggest news in the world to tag Tee Higgins, but all of this goes to show that I think they're still up there working. They're still up there working, and that's all I really want to see with my front offices, with my teams. I just want to see them work. I think there will be a deal done because I think there has to be a deal done. It doesn't make sense to take away from this team right now. And we've argued this 100 different times. If we had an escape plan, if we had a Jermaine Burton, if we had more defensive players that had value, then this would be a very easy decision, and you can get as much value as you can out of Tee Higgins and Trey. But that's not what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with a depleted defense that had one of the worst statistical seasons I've ever seen. And that's with the NFL's sack leader in Trey Hendrickson. And on the offense, it was the best offense maybe in the NFL, and Tee Higgins was a part of that offense. Taking those two guys away makes no sense. Extend them both. You have the money.
I'm not in the middle. I don't have a hot take regarding this. I think if they move on from Tee Higgins, I know you guys will be upset. I don't think it's the worst decision to move on from Tee Higgins.
I won't necessarily be upset if they get the right return.
Yes.
I would have been upset if they didn't tag him and he walked. I would have been livid. But if they get the right return in a tag and trade because it doesn't work out with the contract-wise, emphasis on the right return, then I wouldn't be that mad. I think this is how you handle something like this.
Yeah, and because at first the fact that we were even wondering, are they just going to let him walk out? And I think it was one of those two where, of course, if you do win the Super Bowl, because that was the intention of why they, there was a reason Trey Hendrickson requested the trade, and then a little bit before, and Tee Higgins they both said this right before camp started. They just, with all that was on the line heading into this season, Joe Burrow being fully healthy heading into camp, and it just felt like there was a lot of positive mojo heading into preseason, into camp. It was just kind of one of those, before the Jamar Chase thing hit, of course, they both came out and said they just didn't want their contract disputes and their trade requests to be distractions. They just wanted to focus on the task at hand. So it's like they kind of put that behind them and said, let's go all in to win this Super Bowl. If you win the Super Bowl and T walks, you're going to be saying, well, man, what if we would have kept that core together? But at least you had something to show for it. There's nothing you didn't even make the playoffs. There's nothing to show for T coming back. And maybe there's that unfinished business side to T that he wants to come back as well. And I think the other thing, too, is like I said, if they end up moving on from him, I'm fine with that at the end of the day. I'm fine if they end up moving on with him, depending on the return, of course. But also, if they keep him, I'm fine with that, too. I don't think the Bengals can go wrong. Now that this is probably going to be a tag situation, I don't think the Bengals can go wrong moving forward unless they screw up the return. What is that return, though? You said the return has to be right for you to feel good about it. What is that return?
I would be open to a second round and a fourth round or something in that range. As a second round, a high second round and a mid-round pick. I think the Patriots are a team everyone keeps circling in terms of the draft, and they're picking, I believe, fourth in the draft. So their second round pick and their fourth or fifth round pick, I think, would be somewhere in that sweet spot, because you're not just trading Tee Higgins, you're also trading the right to sign him to a $30+ million extension. So you have to take a little bit off the top there. I think Tee Higgins, the wide receiver, is absolutely worth a first round pick. There's no doubt about that. I just don't know if you can get that with the extension they would then have to pay. I do think there's a world where the Bengals put the exclusive tag, or non-exclusive tag, on Tee Higgins this offseason, which is what the Ravens did did with Lamar Jackson a few years ago, which allows any team to give you 2 first-round picks for the player. And while I think that would be a crazy ask for Tee Higgins, if he is on that non-exclusive tag, is there any chance a team desperate enough calls and gives 2 ones?
No, not 2 ones. I would venture to say that maybe a first rounder, but that would be the extent of that entire trade package. Two first rounders is crazy. I'd have to go back into the NFL weeds and find guys that got 2 first round picks.
Non-quarterbacks.
Yeah. So I don't think so. I think the best offer you'd probably get is maybe a second and a third, maybe 2 seconds. Maybe that would work. 2 first would be insane.
So do you think
you'd have to do it?
The wide receiver market, and by the way, 45, he just texted it. We're going to push it to 45. He's getting through security at the airport now, just a heads up. So do you think that the wide receiver market this offseason, I think, hurts the Bengals, and not just free agent wise, but through the trade market too? Cooper Kupp, is a lot of teams, do we give up 2 second rounders to go after Tee Higgins, or do we just figure out a way to go get Cooper Kupp? Devontae Adams is going to be a free agent. There's a lot of talks out of San Francisco that Deebo Samuel is going to be made available. So it's like, and that's just right now as we sit here in mid-February. I think that list is going to grow longer of potential wide receivers that are available. I don't think the available free agents now are that good. Like we've talked about, like the Amari Coopers and others. But I think that the names that keep entering the fold, does that hurt the Bengals? Does it the fact that you can go get a Deebo, of a Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, do you think that hurts the demand that the Bengals could potentially have or get in return for T?
I don't think so.
No,
I think Tee Higgins is comfortably a tier above all the guys you just named. I don't think Cooper Kupp is even close. I think maybe you could say Devontae Adams, you could talk yourself into him having a year or 2 left of elite play somewhere else. But Deebo Samuel, I think, is pretty strictly a gadget guy and needs to have a Shanahan-esque offense with a big brain and a big playbook to get him going to a point where he's the number 1 wide receiver. And I don't know that the other 2 guys have much of a leash left. I think you're getting T at the prime of his career for the start of a long contract. I think that's appetizing to everyone. Any rankings of free agents you see has Tee Higgins number 1, and the next wide receiver isn't coming up for a while. So obviously those guys in trades aren't on those lists, but I still think Tee Higgins would comfortably be a few spots above a Cooper Kupp or a Devontae Adams or a Deebo Samuel. So no, I think teams that want Tee Higgins would still want Tee Higgins.
Yeah, and again, not to mention, the thing that makes T great is not only that he's fantastic at football, is that he's established a good relationship here in Cincinnati. Like, this is somebody who wants to be with Joe and Jamar, and when he's with Joe and Jamar, the offense looks unstoppable. I don't think you're going to get that chemistry with just any wide receiver. I saw Trevor Lawrence was out there either yesterday or the day before with Kay Adams trying to bring Tee Higgins to the Jaguars. And it was just like, no, I think that T wants to be with a guy that he's had years of relationship with, and he wants to stay here and continue that. Nobody wants to leave their job, right? Nobody wants to leave all their work friends and stuff like that and start new somewhere else. If you're able to get a contract that you know you're worth and you get the ability to stay with your guys, then I think you're going to do it. And I think that's a big part of this too. I think we can talk about drafting a wide receiver in here, which the Bengals will have to do eventually, or we could talk about bringing a free agent here. Either way, whoever they bring in is not going to have that immediate impact, that relationship with Joe Burrow and Jamar that Tee Higgins has right now.
See, and don't necessarily disagree with that at all, because money is why he would leave.
Right.
The only reason he leaves is because of
100%.
money.
Yeah.
Because you could also look at it as he could have his cake and eat it too. He can go to Washington and play with a great quarterback over there and get all that money. He can go to Justin Herbert, play with a great quarterback over there, and get all of his money. We're going to find out just how much he values being a part of that core. And by the way, I do not mean if he leaves, like if he ultimately pushes to be traded, right? I do not believe that he doesn't value the relationship with Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's just hey, I want my money, and if you're not going to give me my money, and that's the other thing too, like how much of a cut would he have to actually make? Like, because you could say, okay, instead of 30, you're going to get 27. It's like, okay, you're going to leave over $3 million, but you could also look at the Bengals and say, you're going to let him leave over $3 million?
Correct.
Like, that's always the tug of war I always have. Like, when people brought up, Tom Brady always took less money. He never took anything. He never took a less amount of money that was just egregious. It's not like, oh, you could have got 40 and you took 28. Like, he always just took a couple million less. So that's why I always laughed at that. But if you're a T, I hope you don't leave Cincinnati over $3 million. But at the same time, if you're the Bengals, don't let him leave over $3 million a year, because that's also kind of silly at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, now I do think that's what it would be. I don't think it's any more than $5 million if we're talking about the discrepancy between the Bengals' top offer and what he gets on the open market. There's no way the Bengals are able to even act like they want to keep Tee Higgins around if they're coming in below $26 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not – they have to at least start at what the franchise tag is, which is 26.2. So that's the starting point there, and I can't imagine he's getting any more than 31 or 32 top end open market. So yeah, we're talking about $4 to $6 million range there, $3 to $6 million range there between the Bengals and the top offer, and that's why we've been saying for the longest time now in this city, the Bengals just have to get close. Give him a competitive offer, give him a competitive structure with competitive guarantees, and I firmly believe that he's going to stay.
Now, they have to pay him first before Jamar, right?
I think just chronologically because of the tag.
That's what I was going to say. It makes more sense to do it that way. Well, do you think Trey would be last in all this?
I do, because once you extend T, money then comes into play in terms of cash that you have available and how you're going to be able to do those and timelines. And I think you just have to get Jamar done, because you have to get Jamar done.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything really more to say there than, Tee Higgins' timeline is unique because he's a pending free agent and he's so sought after. I think Jamar Chase is just an unnecessary distraction if you don't get that done as quickly as possible.
I agree.
Man, you know what would have made sense? If you would have, I don't know if they considered this. What if, revisionist history, I get it. What if they would have taken care of Jamar last year?
It would have been cool.
Then you wouldn't have to do both this.
It would have been cool. They could have offered him a contract and that wasn't low.
Well, it's almost like don't start the conversation if you're not willing to have it.
But
they did.